nicely, as I would expect.
Has he said it firmly?
But I think he said it quite firmly that, in his view, it is in the interests of the entire Western world, of the US, but also Britain, to stay within the EU. That's not new. Every American president in my lifetime has taken that view of Britain's role in Europe.
Douglas Murray, was he right to weigh into the debate in this way?
Well, he obviously had a right to weigh in. I mean, I think that people who are sort of saying, who does he think he is? I mean, he's the president of the United States of America, our most important ally. I think he's wrong. I think the obvious point is the fact that President Obama, as Martin Wolf just said, is relaying the view that all American leaders have had. But the key point is, of course, they're in favour of Britain remaining in the EU for American interests. They see the EU as a pretty difficult entity in which Britain can exercise some restraint and a broadly transatlantic influence and a pro-American influence.
Martin Wolf, is this just naked self-interest on Washington's part?
It seems to me that the United Kingdom, as not merely an ally, let's be very, very brutal about it, a dependent ally of the United States, should take very seriously what America thinks its interests are. It's not the only consideration for the United Kingdom. We should think of other things, but we shouldn't simply say, oh, well, that's just America's interest and we don't give a damn about American interests. They're of complete irrelevance to us. We have played a role in bringing the United States into Europe and keeping it in it after the World War, very crucially with NATO. So if the United States says, we think it's in our interests for you to be in Europe, that should matter to us.
Very quickly, I mean, President Obama has particularly focused on the security aspect of this, and this has to be picked up upon. Because, of course, the two most important security assets this country has are our membership of NATO and our intelligence gathering capability through the Five Eyes intelligence network, none of the other members of which are members of the European Union. There's no suggestion that if we were to leave the European Union, that there would be any trouble with our membership of NATO or any trouble with our membership of the Five Eyes network. But the other thing is, of course, it's a very interesting thing. There is a technocratic and financial argument for remaining in the EU, which is a plausible and respectable argument to have. But there is also a romantic argument about the EU. And one of the things that's interesting about President Obama's intervention is that it also takes this effectively romantic view, which is that after the war, the EU managed to save Europe from further pre-1945-like bloodshed. Well, I have to say that there is a very strong argument for the opposite at the moment. If you look across Europe, there's a very good argument that it's not done very well recently for our security.
Martin Wolf, I mean, in your piece, you seem to be suggesting that the entire cohesion of the West might be at risk, and that's something that seems to be echoed in President Obama's commentary too. I mean, is that likely?
My own view is that since the end of the Cold War, we have moved into a different period, and that's become even more obvious in recent years. The US is shifting away from its dominant concern with the security of Europe. It remains important, but it's not as central. I think it's pretty clear that its commitment even to intervention through NATO is becoming at least a little more doubtful. What it thinks is that Europe as a whole faces some very profound security challenges. And the Middle East is obviously one, and North Africa, migration is linked to that, and also with Russia. The United States does not want to be in the position of simply writing a blank check to support Europe as a whole, which is as rich as the United States, has far more people in the United States. It's increasingly politically difficult for it to support that. It hopes, and I agree with this hope, that over time Europe will be able more effectively to stabilize the continent and to defend itself. My own view is you can't possibly argue that the EU caused the terrorist actions in Paris or Brussels. That obviously will be ludicrous. This is the consequence of developments, very profound and dangerous developments beyond our continent.
First of all, nobody will blame the EU for suicide bombings like those in Brussels the other day. But I mean, open borders are a beautiful idea if you're a Parisian who wants to go to Brussels for lunch for the day. It's a hideous idea if you're a jihadist who wants to leave Brussels to go to Paris for the weekend. And I don't think anyone can claim now that the open borders policy within the EU and the very lax external borders policy, which by the European Commission Vice President's own admission meant that at least 60% of the millions that came into Europe last year have no reason to be here. This doesn't sound like an entity that's enormously on top of our external or internal borders or our general security.
Does that mean that you agree with those who today, from the Leave campaign, who want Britain to leave the European Union, say that America's been rather hypocritical because it would never sign up to some of that multilateralism and open borders?
America won't even sign up to the International Criminal Court. I mean, I think for understandable reasons, but America would never sign up to the giving away of sovereignty that this country has had to go through with the EU. It would never agree to open borders with Mexico. It would never agree to having laws imposed upon the American people from Brazil.
Quick final word from you, Martin Wolf. Is it perhaps that America just doesn't need to?
I mean, comparing the US and UK positions is in all respects, in my view, ludicrous. It's a superpower. We aren't. It is absolutely clear on the other point that the Europeans had an idealistic view about free movement, which I think was a wonderful idea, but was very badly implemented. It's going to have to be tightened up dramatically. They know it. It's not going to be better without us. And if they fail, and I think our leaving makes that more likely, we will suffer the consequences.
Financial Times columnist Martin Wolf. I was also talking to Douglas Murray of the Henry Jackson Society. If you want to read President Obama's article in full, I've just tweeted a link to it at James Menendez.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.